Hi everyone, Monique here, Intuitive Soul Savant. Welcome to my channel and welcome back as a subscriber. Thank you to the subscribers for watching my videos. I really appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, pop over to the playlists and you'll find some videos there on shadow work, especially challenging aspects with a Pluto transit. Okay, so welcome everybody. Today's video is regarding the grief, shame, pain, loss, all of those very dark, shadowy emotions that come up for us when we're having a challenging aspect from Pluto. So today's video is called Identity Paralysis. So we have a word now. We've got a word, it's textbook. And if anybody asks you, my God, what's happened to your life? My God, how many Chinamen did you kill to have to be going through this, losing everything, nobody wanting you to be around? You have an answer. I'm going through an identity paralysis. And that was probably one of the biggest issues that my ego had to undergo, was when I lost everything, there was a part of me, my ego, that was worried what others would think of me at that time in my life, losing everything. I was really worried about what people would think of me. And I didn't have the words to explain, oh, well, I'm going through a Pluto transit and, you know, with a Pluto transit, everything is taken from you that isn't in your best benefit. It's all about power and blah, 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 blah. People would not understand. There's no way people would have understood. But we have a textbook word called identity paralysis. And with the identity paralysis, behind the identity paralysis is shame, guilt, grief for our pasts, for those comfortable pasts that we were holding so tightly onto. And with our identity paralysis, you know, we can get angry and we can get frustrated and we can feel hopeless in our life. Because with the identity paralysis, we've gone through a change. Humans don't like change. Even though we know, and it's written all over memes everywhere, that change is inevitable. The only thing that you can rely on in this life is change. We will always be changing. However, part of our human makeup is we like to feel comfortable. We get into a comfort zone and we have these identities. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is where I go. This is who I have as friends. And that is an identity. Then when the Pluto transit is activated in your life, these things can drop away and leave you left with no identity, which leaves you paralyzed because you're unsure of what to do next. So major life changes will cause an identity paralysis. Now, with the fixed signs, Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio, well, they're fixed. Out of all of the signs, they really don't want to change. They will say no first before even considering whether that's something that they'd like to undertake. Then they'll say yes. So their first answer is no. And then they may consider it, and then they may give you a yes. So the fixed signs, it is hardest for these people to change, okay? With the cardinal signs introduce change. However, they're in control of the change. They're leading the change. They've already decided this is what we're going to do for a change. But if the changes are involuntary or they're out of our control, then cardinal signs will go down into identity paralysis. Now, with our mutable signs, that's your Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo, they like change. However, with an identity paralysis, the really big identities that we've held close to ourselves, these are the things that get affected, and these are the things that can go overnight, and it's very, very shocking. So losing a desired or comfortable identity or a patterned identity, an identity you've just been repeating over and over and over, and you've never even asked yourself whether you actually want to be identified as that, or identities from our conditioning that have been projected onto us. And these identities come from our early caregivers or our families. You're a this, you're a that, you're a this, you're a that. And when that's been said to you enough times, you may end up leaving home believing that that's your identity, when in actual fact, it isn't your true self. It is a projected identity coming from others onto you. So let's talk about where we could lose our identities. And we're talking about a Pluto transit here, but this can happen for anybody, even if they're not having a Pluto transit. But definitely a Pluto transit is going to pull the rug out from under you, and it will be your identity that will be in question. So, for example, you could be a married person and identify as a married person. You have a breakup, one person may have an affair, or you're just not getting on, or for whatever reason, you are no longer married. So you've gone from this identity of being married to being single, and adjusting to that and accepting that can be an issue. You could be a mother or a father and lose your child. And if your children or child is no longer living, yes, you are still a mother and father, but you're not actually mothering and you're not fathering somebody. Because remember, our identities take up a lot of our time. Our 24 hours in a day is filled with our identities. So when we lose these identities, we've got a lot of time on our hands. Therefore, we have a lot of time to feel the emotions of the loss of the identity. You could be a child caring for elderly parents for years and years and years, and then they pass, which is natural. However, you've lost that identity of being a caregiver. What do I do now? Who am I now? Athletes can lose their identities with injuries. They've identified themselves as a professional athlete, something untoward happens, and they could end up in a wheelchair, something like that. Their identity can be gone overnight. Who am I now? What am I now? Our financial status can change. We could be very, very wealthy. Somebody in our corporation may do the wrong thing and embezzle money from us, and then we have to go bankrupt. And my gosh, all of a sudden, we have nothing. We've come from a high financial status to poverty overnight. This can happen. Who am I? What am I? What do I do now? We could be a corporate manager or a higher up in a corporation and be demoted. So accepting that identity in the demoted position, there's a lot of energy and emotion and grief that can come with that demotion. Losing a limb. We could have all our limbs, be in an accident, lose a limb. We've identified as a person with all of our limbs. We can walk, run, jump, skip, do everything. And then all of a sudden, we're handicapped, we're disabled. That is an identity crisis. We could lose our home where we've lived for 20, 40 years. We could lose that through no fault of our own, through weather, through fire, through a partner making a bad financial decision without us knowing. We can lose our identities from being an addict or an alcoholic or a gambler. And then all of a sudden we're sober. Who am I as that sober person? I've operated out of this other identity for so long, I don't know who I am sober. We could be a prisoner for 20, 30 years and all of a sudden be released from prison. Our identity was as a prisoner. We don't know how to live as a free person. We don't identify with living as a free person, especially if we've spent decades in confinement. We could be a nun or a priest and then leave the convent or the church, and then we're just a citizen. There's an identity crisis. I've been in the convent or what have you, I've served, and then all of a sudden I'm out of that institution and I need to find me. There's many different scenarios. Just go to the comments of a lot of our videos and you'll see people's comments of how their identities have been paralyzed by this Pluto transit. And especially if the sun's being activated, because it's connected with our ego. And that's when our ego kicks in. That's when we worry about what everybody else thinks about us. What are they going to think about us? Now, there's a few things that we can do to help ourselves adjust and transition into our new identity. Now, with Pluto, I've already made a video. It's over when it's over. Okay, so we do need to go through the Pluto process before the rebirth, before the new identity. And that is the magical gift that I bring to this channel, is that as long as you know what you're going through, I think it's 100% better than not knowing. Think of all the people out there that are not in tune with astrology, and they are going to have a Pluto transit and they have no idea what's going on. I read a lot of stories about different people's lives, different public figures as well, and they tell me all of these, you know, in the story it tells you all these different things that happen. Then I go and look up their astrology, and yes, they've had a Pluto transit. However, they're not astrologers. They don't understand that. They just think that their life took a turn. Well, I'd rather know about it. It really did help me with my Pluto transit, knowing that this just wasn't all happening, all the loss wasn't happening randomly. There was a purpose. There was a Pluto transit going on. I was evolving. I was dying to the old self. I was transforming and rebirthing. So, guys, you guys are so lucky that you're hooked into astrology, even in the smallest way, to know that when the identity paralysis occurs, you'll have some understanding of what's happened. Then we don't have to fall into being a victim. If you've got victim traits, though, you still will fall into being a victim, because I did fall into being a victim, even though I knew that I was undergoing a Pluto transit. So how we can flip the switch from our old identity to our new identity is that we could find a key event to be able to move from the past into the future. Now, for us, studying Pluto, we could say, right, after Pluto moves 3 degrees away from the planet that is being affected, being aspected, that is my new identity. I will be rebirthing then. That way we have some sort of power over what's actually happening through the transition. A milestone can be used. You know, this is even without a Pluto transit. Right, when I'm 50, I am going to be beyond the past and the effects that my past has had over me. We define a moment and we tell ourselves, that's our rebirth. That is our rebirth. Even though we know it'll take what it takes with Pluto, we can help ourselves in the now moment by defining a future moment that we will step into our new identity and allow the past to be in the past. So a specific moment can be the divider between the past and the future. Or even in our now moment, we keep drawing a line in the sand. If we find that our consciousness keeps reflecting back to how hard done we are, right, we stop ourselves, because that's just pattern thinking. Okay, those thoughts are habitual, and that is the problem that we can have with the Pluto transit, is that the thoughts can become habitual when we're suffering over our suffering. We keep dredging it up in our mind, therefore the emotions get activated. So we do have to use our mind on the far side of the Pluto transit, because our thoughts become habitually patterned. We need new thinking to step into our rebirth. The old thinking must be left in the past. We can get stuck in our emotions of the past, and that can block the transition of the new. We might cognitively get it. We might get, yes, that's the past, but the emotions can still be stuck, where our mind knows that's the past. I don't want to think about the past anymore. The past is gone. Yes, I love that family. Yes, I love that job. Yes, I love that child. It's gone. And for that, I'm ever grateful that I had it in the first place. Self-forgiveness is key as well. We need to forgive what we were, what we did, what we didn't do in the past, to be able to transition into our new identity. We have to accept who we are, and what we did. Forgiving ourselves, it breaks that cycle. We can also have coexisting identities. I notice if you ask people, what do you do? I am this. I am a mother. I am a teacher. I am a healer. I am an astrologer. We can have many identities. I'm a sun worshipper. We need to have many identities, because we're forever changing and forever evolving. If we've got one identity, we are stuck. And that was all unconscious before Pluto came along. We didn't realize that the identities that we had were not serving us. I'm the scapegoat of the family. Well, that didn't serve me, that identity, and I don't want that identity anymore. I'm not the scapegoat for anybody. I'm the alky of the family. I don't want that identity. Looking into my family, they're all alcoholics, and they always were alcoholics. However, they projected onto the weaker empathic member of the family to wear the sins of the family. So there's so many identities that just are not ours to own. They've been projected onto us. And this is where our awareness opens up, our consciousness expands. We have a lot of time to reflect, to feel emotional energy moving through our body. And as those emotions move through the body, it's releasing the old dysfunctional identities that weren't serving us. So lots of identities, have lots of identities. I identify as a creative, I identify it as a swimmer, as a whatever you want. Try to have a lot of identities. So you're not just classing yourself as one person. You're allowing yourself to evolve. We can use our imaginations to help us out. So imagine the identity of somebody coming from a third world country, and in the third world country, they were a doctor, and then they come to a country like Australia, and they're taxi drivers because their tickets aren't eligible in Australia to be a doctor. So they've gone from being a doctor to being a taxi driver. Their identity has very much changed. However, they can use their imagination to say, okay, I'm going to be a taxi driver for 5 years, save my money, and then I'm going to go and study to be a doctor in Australia. We can use our imaginations to get us through the transition. I'm in this place only until an imagined place, even if it doesn't come true. We're not stuck then. Identity paralysis is stuckness. I was that. I'm not that now because it's being taken from me, involuntary. I don't know who I am now. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Well, I'm happy and accepting the fact that this is where I'm at until an imagined situation, right? So your imagination can help. The whole idea is to soothe ourselves in the now moment. And many of my videos in the playlist go over all of these issues and the darkness that can come over us when we have our challenging Pluto transit. Use your imagination by shopping online. Okay, I'm bankrupt, but I won't always be. I want to travel. I don't have money because I'm bankrupt. And I was that, and I was that, and I was that, but this is where I'm at now. I mean, imagine traveling. I mean, that sort of goes along the law of attraction. But the imagination can be used to get us through the transition, because it's in the transition of not having those old identities that we feel stuck, we feel wounded, we feel forgotten, we feel alone. Okay, so we have a word now. So that's what the video is about. So if anybody asks you, oh my God, what happened to your life? I'm going through an identity paralysis. What's that mean? Go and Google it. That's all you need to say, because you know you're going through an identity paralysis. So when Pluto comes along and all these things are dropping out of your life that you identified with, and they're gone, and now you've got all this time and you don't know what to do, watch my videos. No, I'm joking. You know you're going through an identity paralysis, and on the other side of this Pluto transit, I'm going to be the best, most powerful person, Monique, that I can be. All right, guys, just a short one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all real soon. Namaste.